Let's get more analysis on this now with Denisse Rudic. She's the founder and director of Rudich Advisory and joins us now from London. Really good to have you with us, Denisse. So we heard the G7 nations agreeing to call for a humanitarian pause, not a ceasefire, however. How significant is this joint statement?
So I think the G7 statement is a significant statement. Yeah, this is possibly one of the world's most complex and challenging conflicts that has been taking place for many, many years. I think one of the biggest challenges was that the Israeli prime minister has ruled out a ceasefire, but has indicated that he would accept tactile little pauses for humanitarian aid. So I think trying to kind of find a balance between um, making sure that there are corridors that are available for humanitarian aid to go through is incredibly important. At the same time, um, there are many, many calls for a ceasefire from many pockets around the world as well taking place.
Well, that's right. An overwhelming number of people in many countries have been protesting on the streets calling for a ceasefire. But Antony Blinken hasn't revealed who among the G7 was pushing for a complete truce versus who was advocating for a pause. Given your background with the G7, do you get a sense of who might have been pushing for what outcome?
If I'd been a fly in the room, I'd be able to tell you. I think what was interesting is during his press briefing earlier today, he did discuss and he did share that one of the questions that he was asking with of his G7 colleagues was, you know, the need to explain how to address what he described as the unacceptable results it would likely bring about of having the ceasefire. And he listed the result as Hamas still being in place, 200 hostages still being held, and Hamas having actually stated the intensity to repeat the events of October 7 again and again and again. And I think that continues to remain one of the challenges.
And we know that this joint statement was just the second that the G7 have released since the outbreak of war on October 7. If this conflict drags on and we see the civilian casualty count rise even further in Gaza, do you foresee the G7 convening again to release another, perhaps more forceful statement?
I think from what we've seen in the past, with regards to other kind of humanitarian crises and conflicts around the world, that is likely. I think there's still a lot of work that's being done in the background between G7 countries and allies, and also just around the world, conversations taking place using diplomatic channels to try to kind of bring about an end to the conflict. And they have stated an intent to try to see how they can bring about lasting peace. Secretary of State Blinken. You shared the list that he gave during his press briefing. But also, they've talked about the need for having further sanctions. They've talked about the fact that they have released, I think, 600 or $500 million in aid for the Palestinian people to support, again, humanitarian, or to bring about humanitarian support. But their focus, I believe, is again on trying to bring forward a path for long-lasting peace. How that will happen, I think, does remain to be seen. But I do expect another, potentially, if the conflict continues to escalate, some more statements issued by the G7.
Okay, Denisse Rudic, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much again for joining us on TRT World.